What is going on, Degen's Fight Night? We are here for UFC Vegas 63, Calvin Kattar versus Arnold Allen. We are on the back end of UFC 280. I'll be the first to admit it, not the prettiest of pay-per-view events from the Fight Night group here. Took an L on the King's Purse slate for the first time in about 2 months, I'd say. Honestly, I think it's been about five event stretch dating back about 2 months. So, we have to take that one on the chin, move forward into this card. Boys, how we feeling?
Man, super happy, super healthy to be here. Last week it was unfortunate, but you live and you learn. I think we all learned at least something about, our handicapping per se and how we can better ourselves. And we're just going to continue to grow this thing and, learn from it and get better from it. So can't wait to hop into this card.
Yeah, I mean, we took it on the chin, like you said. It's but the silver lining is that, a big L that we took was probably the worst decision of all time in Petr Yan. And, I can sleep well at night knowing that we were on the wrong side of kind of a just greasy decision. I thought Yan had that. I could see people, saying O'Malley, but, onward and upward. And, like you said, we take this one on the chin and try to make some money and get it all back this weekend.
Yeah, I think the worst part about that Petr Yan L to Sean O'Malley was that Twitter Spaces when that kid came in. After we all made our case for Petr Yan, he came in there barking up Sean O'Malley with pretty much zero analysis or information backing him up. He just liked Sean O'Malley, right? And
it's the Gen Zers, taking over, and that's the new breed of MMA fans. And hey, listen, at the end of the day, he cashed his ticket and we didn't.
Exactly.
So
I'm happy for him that he was able to cash out on that ticket. It's just funny how this game plays out sometimes. But enough living in the past. It's time to move on to this card here. Bury the hatchet there. Make some money on this card because we spoke about this 2 weeks ago. It's these smaller cards that have less of a buildup behind them that I feel are easier to get an advantage of. And we seem to have that. And it's funny because we spoke about this Kattar versus Arnold Allen fight for a few months now, right? We said this is the fight that's getting buried underneath the UFC 280. It's finally here. And without further ado, I do want to introduce our guest of this week, Max. He is a staple in our Twitter Spaces every single week. He joins in there with the Alpha, giving us good breakdowns. So I'd like to welcome him in for this episode. Max, how we doing?
Good. I took 280 on the chin like you guys. I'm excited to bounce back on this card. I love a lot of the spots and ready to go.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining us. Like Matt said, you've always been such a strong supporter of Fight Night and, always hopping in the spaces, articulating super well. So, it's only right to bring you on and chop this card up with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so without further ado, let's hop right into this one, right? The first fight on this main card, Dustin Jacoby versus Khalil Rountree Jr. Rountree Jr. coming off an absolute beatdown of Carl Roberson. I'm not going to name names, but someone was on the bad end of that one, I think, with Carl Roberson. And you know what? Dustin Jacoby, we spoke about him a month back on this show, right, when we had Damon Jackson on, because they have similar arcs, right? That's their second stint in the UFC. They found a lot of success. No one's found more success with the second opportunity than Dustin Jacoby has. He's coming off a first-round knockout win over Degen Jung. I was actually there live in attendance for it. Max, if I'm not mistaken, I think you were there too for UFC Long Island.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so that one, I have to admit, I was at the concession line there. I was trying to get a beer during that fight because I didn't think it was going to end in 45 seconds, however long it took. And I wasn't able to get my live bet in on Dustin Jacoby, and I flip-flopped on that fight before it happened. If you remember, Dan, you were on the Degen Jung side all week long. I said, Dustin Jacoby's got what it takes to beat him. Woke up Saturday morning. I said, I don't really know about this one. I may have to flip-flop here.
Yeah, I mean, it's I remember that fight. I remember, you flip-flopping last minute and in typical proto fashion. And you're right, I was on Roberson.
I'm still hearing about it too.
Hey, I'm still hearing about Roberson. It is what it is. I took a stab at Roberson against Rountree. It turned out to be a horrible. Actually, you know what? That's wrong. I was on Roberson against Njokuani. Not Njokuani, sorry, Kennedy Njoku.
My mistake. I saw Roberson's last fight. I mean, Rountree's last fight was Roberson, so I must have mistaken the two. So I'll give you a pass there. But let's get into this matchup here. I believe as it currently stands, Jacoby's sitting around minus 175, if I'm not mistaken. And, I think it's pretty justifiable considering the run that he has been on. You have a matchup here. It's most likely going to take place on the feet. Neither guy really works in takedowns. I do believe Rountree, if he was smart, he would try to mix in takedowns, but we're not going to give him an attribute that he hasn't shown us yet in his career, right? So for that reason, I think that this matchup really favors Dustin Jacoby, right? I mean, he has an extensive kickboxing background, fought Alex Bejeda in the kickboxing scene too. This guy is just on fire. He's caught lightning in a bottle in this second stint here. He does an excellent job of controlling distance and space between his opponent. And I feel like this is a marquee matchup for him. It's almost like it's a matchup between power versus technique, the technique being on the Jacoby side. And I just feel as if Rountree's forward pressure isn't going to be enough to be able to get inside Dustin Jacoby. And really, I don't see any way that he could really frustrate him here. It's always possible that, you could catch him with these 4-ounce gloves and take him out of there. But, we've seen from Jacoby, he loves to control distance. He utilizes those long limbs. He throws leg kicks as well. That'll be able to separate the distance. I think he just has all the tools in the striking game to get the win here. Just don't really see an avenue for Rountree.
Yeah, I mean, what we have here truly is a kickboxing match. That's really all it is. The resurgence of Dustin Jacoby, right? I mean, second stint in the UFC, right? Had his 2 early losses back in the early 2010s. Comes back, 9 years later, and is 7-0-1 in his second stint, man. And it's absolutely wild. I mean, he hasn't lost a mixed martial arts fight in seven years. A guy in Rountree, right? I mean, 6-4 in the UFC, doesn't necessarily have the most quality wins on his record, although he did knock out Paul Craig a few years back. But if there's one thing about Rountree, man, he is incredibly violent. And these last 2 fights where he just knocked out his opponents cold, I mean, it's a scary sight to see. And for that reason, it just seems like there's so many different outcomes of this fight. I could see either guy knocking each other out. I could see Dustin winning a decision, but like Rountree is so incredibly volatile that like you guys know, man, he clips you once and you're going out. I have a tough time getting behind a guy in Jacoby who has that risk of getting clipped. I don't think Jacoby is the most necessarily sound guy on the feet from a defensive standpoint. And like I said, like there's just so much power coming from both guys. I do expect a knockout here. It's hard for me to find the edge on which side it's coming on. Look, Dustin Jacoby, man, he's training an incredible gym there at Factory X, I believe. With Lionheart Smith, Rob Wilkinson, I believe, from the PFL, Cody Brundage, of course. So, he's definitely getting some good reps in there. And man, this is tough, man. It's really hard for me to find an edge in this spot. That's really what it all comes down to. Maybe one of you guys can convince me. Max, what are your thoughts on this opening fight on the main card?
So I'm not gonna lie, I hate this fight. I hate Dustin Jacoby as a fighter. I was on Down Jug big there. I've been on everyone I think except Justin Ledet against him. And for that reason, I'm not going to bet Rountree because I really want to. I like fight doesn't go the distance here. It depends what number it comes out as. I think Jacoby's got good kickboxing, like you guys said. He does a really good job of managing his distance, uses his leg kicks and his kickboxing really well to do that. But he really, like you said, isn't defensively sound, and he's got a shit chin, if we're being honest. It's suspect, and if Rountree lands one, he puts him out. But what I wrote while I was doing my one fight tape for this, Khalil, half the time he's a murderer. Half the time he's just a moron who does nothing. And you can't trust that, and I don't think I can trust my money betting on it. I wouldn't hate Rountree KO as a poke. I wouldn't hate Jacoby KO as a poke. But I don't think the money line has a lot of value in this bet or in this fight. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, one thing about Rountree that I noticed, I feel like his striking, I don't want to say overrated, but I just feel like maybe it's a bit overhyped because of that Gokhan Saki knockout. You take out that win, and most of his wins have come against guys that are primarily grapplers or sort of mid-level strikers. A win over Gokhan Saki. I mean, I remember that fight. A lot of people, were counting him out because Gokhan Saki is this, this big striker coming from the striking background and all these knockouts and kind of making the shift to MMA, and then Rountree goes in and knocks him out, and that was a statement win. And then he came back and got KO'd by Johnny Walker, right? So you don't really know what you're going to get with Rountree. And then at the same time, from the mental side of things, don't forget he retired a few years ago, and then kind of lost his love for the game. He came back. That brings up a question in my head in terms of where he's at. Certainly in his career right now, it seems like this is a big step up in competition. He had a couple questionable losses, right, to Kutalaba, Perchino, and then he goes out and blows out Bukowski's knee. He goes out and finishes Robertson, who, I mean, everybody's finishing Carl Robertson these days. So, certainly impressive victories. They were both finishes, but I think Jacoby certainly has had the better streak as of late. And I was on Jung against Jacoby. I thought the power would be too much for Jacoby to handle, and man, did he ever shut me up? That was impressive.
On you there.
Oh, absolutely. And I was on Jung all week. I was on Jung. I got him as a dog early in the week, and then the line flipped. I remember that. That was all over MMA Twitter all week. And, I think the key here is going to be at distance. Jacoby should be able to manage that. Rountree is just very aggressive. And when he's very aggressive and he starts to land, that's where he's most dangerous. But if you can negate that aggression and kind of use it against him, I think Jacoby, being the taller guy here, the more seasoned striker, should be able to, turn this into more of a kickboxing match. And I actually see a situation where this goes the 3 rounds. Just, Jacoby is going to have to be wary of Rountree's power. So I don't think he's going to be, I don't think he's going to be as aggressive as he was in the Jung fight. Jung kind of overextended and left himself open there and got and kind of paid for it. But Rountree a little bit more of a Muay Thai style, and so it'll be interesting, right? Kickboxing versus Muay Thai here. I think I lean Jacoby here. I'll probably have a play on him. Nothing right now, but this is like to kick off the card. Two solid guys, and Rountree's one of those like hovering around the top 15, hasn't really broken it, but he's still a name. And I think a win over here for Jacoby, and he needs to fight a guy in the top 15, maybe even top 10. I mean, he's at this point, he'll get like 5, 6 in a row. So, I mean, what else can you say?
8. This will be 8 in a row if I'm not.
8 in a row,
Yeah, and I agree with you, Dan. Actually, I think that this fight does go the distance, and the reason being is that I like Jacoby to win here, and I feel like his game plan, stay out of range of the power, land your own shots, and just kind of cruise. And I agree with your point that someone that comes out as strong as Rountree does, you almost have to use that energy against them, kind of go with the flow and reverse it on him. I feel like Jacoby is the kind of guy that can do that. Max mentioned that Jacoby has somewhat of a suspect chin. I assume you're referring to the Maxim Griffin fight where he got hurt there early in the first round. But for what it's worth,
been hurt a couple times.
He survived and he won the fight, So it's hard to knock him for that chin when, he ultimately came out on top. So I like the spot here for Jacoby. I understand people being on Rountree for, several reasons. I just feel in a standing fight that's going to likely be a kickboxing match, I'm going to lean the lifelong kickboxer, just the way I feel on this one. If we don't have anything else to add on this one, go ahead.
And like I had said, this for sure purely can just be my bias against Jacoby because I don't like him, which is likely why I'll stay away from this fight.
Absolutely. I feel like that's going to be a lot of people. It's going to be a theme of this main card. I mean, just to get into the next fight, Gore is one of those guys, right? I mean, his last fight, I think everyone thought that they were getting one over on the sportsbook by taking him, I think, around like minus 150-ish against Cody Brundage, right? And no, I was victim. I believe Kev was victim. I think all 4 of us may have been victims of that one, right? So
yeah,
we find ourselves in a spot here where he's going up against someone in Josh Fremd, who you can make the argument he's in the UFC only because of a short notice opportunity. He raised his hand and he got that opportunity. Now he finds himself minus 175 against Gore, which I find a little bit interesting because we have to sit here and somewhat ask ourselves, right? Did he do enough against Fluffy Hernandez to warrant being minus 175 in the UFC? He did an excellent job getting out of submission attacks from Fluffy Hernandez, who has shown time and time again that he will sink those on majority of the division, right? Just with his relentless pace and takedowns. Fremd was able to keep up with him on short notice. He lasted the full 15 minutes, and he was able to get some nice reversals of his own on Fluffy Hernandez there. So the question becomes, is that enough to justify minus 175? Because this is an emotional game, right? And a lot of us who had Gore last time, we really want to fade him, especially now against someone like Fremd that's gonna take him, assumably, to deep waters, drag him down, take him down again, rinse and repeat. Seems to be his entire style. It's tough for me to bet on this one. I don't necessarily lean one way or the other. I do think Gore has that same one-touch knockout power as Rountree that we just spoke about in that last fight. Is it enough for him to get the job done? Because we've seen him be hesitant. His last fight, he did a decent job up until the point where he got caught and eventually finished on the ground. But, it just seems to be a theme of his career where he's just a little bit gun shy. He doesn't want to gas himself out. Maybe he doesn't want to be in exchanges with return fire. Who knows what it is, but it's hard to trust a guy like that when you're betting on him. So for that reason, I don't lean a certain side on this one. Maybe I lean the over 1.5 a little bit just because I know Fremd is going to be going for takedowns and I know that Gore likely is going to be gun shy. I believe the 1.5 over is, somewhat around even money if I remember correctly. And if I had to play this fight, that would probably be my only lean. But Dan, I'd like to hear your takes on this one.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with your take on Fremd going for takedowns here. I mean, I think he's going to try and strike with Gore. I mean, why wouldn't he? It seems like Fremd, that's what he wants to do. If you look at most of his fights, and again, you got to look at kind of where the market has placed him. This guy was like over a 2-1 dog against RoboCop in his LFA fight that he got. He ended up getting knocked out in the first round. I was watching that fight. Right? What did I say? Yeah, he was a favorite. Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I mean, that says something. I mean, obviously he got finished, but again, RoboCop. It seems like this guy's name is coming up more and more every week. You know, we've had a fighter that fought him that's either beaten him and we're kind of using him as this measuring stick, which is kind of interesting to see. But what I don't like about Gore is, I mean, a couple of things. Number one, I mean, for starters, the guy has no chin. He seems like he can't take a punch. And when you're getting knocked out by Cody Brandon, you got problems. And he seems so confident in his fight build-up. He seems to be the kind of guy that needs to puff his chest out and really try and intimidate his opponent. And it just seems like it backfires on him every single time. And you got to think that, back up against the wall, 2 finish losses in a row. Gore is going to have to come out. He was looking good in his last fight. He was starting to land, and he does throw with big power. I don't know if I can put my money in him right now. I mean, I lean Fremd here. I actually think this is a nice spot for him. He took that fluffy fight on short notice, got taken down 8 times, and it's tough. Fluffy has a solid grappling game, and he was able to kind of control that. I think we're not really going to see the third of the takedown here, so. I think Fremd can find Gore's chin and 3 finished losses in a row. And bye Gore. This guy does not belong in the UFC if he loses this fight. That's for sure. He'll have a 3-3 record. Kind of wild that he has this much notoriety with the kind of record that he has, to be honest. I lean Fremd here. I have no bets as of right now, but I think a lot of people may actually look to bet Gore, right? It's you got him at plus odds here. And he has that knockout power. We've seen Fremd get finished, so I wouldn't. I can totally understand why someone would bet Gore here. So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no. What I'm thinking is you have a guy on the prelims who debuted at UFC 28, and he's on the prelims, and then we have a guy in Gore who's 3-2 in his mixed martial arts career, and he's on the main card. Just scratching my head on that one. I don't even know why this is on the main card. I don't even know why Tresean Gore is in the UFC. Obviously he's reigning from the Ultimate Fighter, but we haven't seen anything in this man to think that he's worthy of this spot. 0-2 in the UFC. This is clearly a spot here where if Tresean Gore doesn't win, he's probably getting cut off the yin yang here. So, like you said, Dan, Gore can be that hammer, cannot be that nail. Is very vulnerable. He may land a few takedowns, and I think that's his path here, is trying to wrestle. But that's not something I'm going to rely on in a guy, who's so inexperienced. And a guy in Josh Fremd, if I'm not mistaken, he's also training at Factory X there.
Yep.
With Dustin Jacoby. So
and Brundage.
Yeah, so you know how we like those spots on the same card. If the energy's going well, who knows? But look, I mean, you can't knock the guy in Josh Fremd for losing his debut on the short notice. He did show a lot of liabilities there. Just the way he leaves his chin wide open. I think it could be there for Gore to clip him. There's just a lot of unknown variables in this fight, man. It's hard for me to find a lean here. Again, both guys, they just aren't the cream of the crop of the UFC. And when you're putting your money on somebody, you gotta trust them. And I just don't trust either of these guys. I think either of these guys can get knocked out. I think both of these guys don't have the highest of IQ. And yeah, quite frankly, anything can happen in this fight. So for that reason, big fade all around for me. Max, anything to add on this one?
Yeah, no, I actually have a bet on this fight already locked in. I capped Fremd here around 70%. So I have a 2-unit bet on him at -170. I think he's a fine fighter all around. He's not great at anything. He has a very good kind of factory X Muay Thai base, but he does a lot of jiu-jitsu and grappling training that you'd be surprised about. He's had a ton better strength of schedule than Tresean, like you guys had mentioned. He's fighting in LFA against RoboCop. I mean, he beat Joel Bauman, who was 4-0 or 4-1 at the time. Dana White looking for a fight. He's winning fights, main events in LFA, and there's a reason he's being put in those spots. I think that his first UFC fight, it wasn't with a full camp, and he fought a guy who's going to push pressure, push pace, and push wrestling. And he really didn't do a horrible job against it. He had great submission defense. He reversed Hernandez actually a couple times in that fight. And he jumped to a deep, deep guillotine at one point that he almost finished. I thought it was interesting that he'll go for stuff like that. And Tresean just should not be in the UFC at this point. This fight really shouldn't be in the UFC, in my opinion. This is a LFA co-main event type fight where you got the up-and-coming guy who's got a ton of potential and raw power versus the guy in Fremd who's got some experience in the organization. I think Gore needs 3 or 4 more fights to really do anything in the UFC, kind of hone in his skills. So I really like Fremd here. I feel bad for Gore. He's so athletic and powerful, and he's got so much raw talent. But like you said, he pumps his chest out because of it, and it's all a false front, and it kind of gives away that aura from him. I also like the fact that he just got starched by Brundage, and Fremd and Brundage are training partners. I think the IQ of Fremd in this matchup will be good because of it, and I do see him going for takedowns and really pushing a pace here. Gore also likes to throw a lot of naked strikes. The leg kick that Brundage knocked him out off of was just a leg kick where he keeps his head down the middle and straight up, and I think that could also happen here.
I love it.
You make some really good points. I agree with you, with Fremd being, he's been in big spots before, right? Like you mentioned, LFA main cards, main events, Dana White looking for a fight, right? I mean, that's how they really found him, got him in the UFC. They basically saw him fight. He fought in front of the boss, did enough to get the job done, and here he is. So I think that carries a lot of weight into matchups like this, especially on a main card, right? If this is buried somewhere on the prelims, might not matter as much, but I agree. I think I would lean Fremd in this spot. I love the conviction from you to put 2 units on him. Factory X is a great gym, right? Is that where he's trained out of?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a great gym. Good spot. I really like that there. You guys have anything else to add for this one?
Yeah, I just want to add, I mean, you guys already mentioned the big knockout of Cody Brundage over Gore. And mind you, that was only like 3.5, 4 months ago. So from a psychological standpoint, you've got to imagine that Gore is going to be coming in a little hesitant, a little weird. I look at this stature as well. And, God forbid if we do see a third round and we have to watch 15 minutes of this fight, I expect Tresean Gore to be absolutely gassed, just based off of his physique, just the musculature that he carries. And yeah, man, I think Josh, like the more I think about it, like I feel like Josh Fremd, like he's going to have that IQ. He's going to have a great game plan coming in here. Like Max said, which is a fantastic point. When you have a training partner, right, that already knocked out an opponent, just gives a little bit of insight of what to expect. And I think that really is going to go a long way in this spot. Say what up to Snoopy. He's saying what's good for a little wake and bake this morning. But yeah, man, back-to-back Factor X fighters. It should be a fun, I guess, a somewhat semi-violent opening main card.
And the big thing with that Cody Brundage-Gore fight is how Brundage fought him. He pushed takedowns. He pushed clinch grappling to tire out Gore. And that is what kind of led to Gore being lazy and not moving his head and not keeping his defense high like he always does. So I really do think, Fremd round 3 could be a very interesting play here.
I like that.
I like
Dan,
it, yeah.
for what it's worth, Fremd is the longer guy. He's like 6'4". I think Gore is listed as 6 foot. So in those grappling exchanges, I know you really like looking at that length there.
Now, it's a great point. I think Fremd seems to be the more well-rounded guy. So I wouldn't, Gore definitely has the power to put Fremd out, and Fremd has been finished there. So that's why I think I actually lean this one to go either over 1.5 for sure. I could see this going the distance. Gore is going to have to be a little bit more tentative here because he does not want to get knocked out again. He was starting to tee off in his last fight and then just got caught. Again, no head movement, no defense, just kind of throwing all gas, no brakes. So I think he needs a win here. He needs the game plan. He doesn't, I get he loves to put on exciting fights, but you got to save your career first before you can think maybe just get the W. Having said that, I mean, like I said, I like the over here. I like Fremd, so it'd be an interesting fight.
And if I'm not wrong, Gore trains out of American Top Team. Is that right?
Yeah, but it's like if I'm not mistaken, it's like a smaller branch in like Georgia. If I'm not mistaken, like there's really no quality talent at this location.
All right, cool. All right, good to know. I guess we can move on to this next fight. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, the theme of this fight, this card seems to be fading fighters that have cost you in the past. And what do we have here? No one other than Jared Vanderaa taking on Waldo Cortes-Acosta, coming off the Contender Series. Where it currently stands, I believe Cortes-Acosta is like a -210 favorite, if I'm not mistaken, over our boy here, Jared Vanderaa. And it's an interesting fight. There's really not much to say about it other than Cortes-Acosta really is a one-trick pony. He's going to try to knock you out. Not much technique, just a bull rush, poor cardio. Honestly, his combinations are pretty poor as well. Out of the Dominican Republic, Jared Vanderaa, we all know he is just on a landslide out of the UFC as it currently stands. I think all four of us are surprised to even see him getting another UFC fight after getting knocked out in the third round by Chase Sherman. But here we are. Without wasting any time, I think Vanderaa is just, I hate to say it, he's the more well-rounded fighter in the octagon when it comes to this one. And I just feel he's gonna stay out of the range of Cortes-Acosta's power, and he's just gonna do enough to cruise to a decision here. I like Vanderaa by decision. It's gonna look a lot like his fight versus Tafa, I believe. I just think Cortes might win round 1, but there's no way he wins round 2 and 3.
Yeah, I mentioned the Tafa fight earlier in the week. We're kind of just shooting the shit about this fight. I like it, and it's one of those spots where again you have a guy like Vanderaa who's on this huge losing skid, and how he's getting pretty much finished. Aside from the Arlovsky fight and all those losses, but at the same time you got to make the case for this guy and saying that listen, he's to decent fighter. Sherman one, to be honest, was I read that one wrong because I thought Chase Sherman was the B-side there, and he kind of surprised me. But I think it's a classic spot where we get a Contender Series guy coming off, and you got to go a lot of first round knockouts. If you look at his Contender Series fight, his opponent, where did they get this guy? It's they were really trying to set this guy up for a knockout. Costa. Appeals to the Latin community. They're trying to build that part of that market, and it makes sense that they want a heavyweight to come in and start starching guys. And this will be certainly an interesting test. Costa has some boxing experience as well, so the hands are going to be there. But outside of that, and outside early, a risk of early KO, the first round, I'm not sure what to expect from Acosta, and for that, I lean Vanderaa. He's fought the more seasoned guys. He seems to be fairly durable, even though, again, he did get finished by Sherman. The guy can take a punch. He's a bigger guy. I think he'll be at a bit of a speed disadvantage here, but I like Vanderaa in this spot, back against the wall. He's had some interesting performances. Seems to not be able to get out of his own way, but again, I think this is a great spot where we can fade the Contender Series guy coming in at a almost 2-to-1 favorite. You're getting good value at Vanderaa. I don't know about the decision just because we're talking heavyweights. I mean, I can absolutely see a scenario where both guys are gassed by the middle of the second, and it just eyes are burning, and I can't turn off this fight quick enough. But give me the plus money on Vanderaa here. Give me the more well-rounded guy, the more, I guess, proven guy, if you will. But I like Vanderaa here in a dog spot for sure. And if he loses, he is on the I have a blacklist. I am going to open a new list and put the ultra blacklist. That is the last time that I am giving this guy a shot. It is now or nothing, Jared. You got to show me something.
And I'm just going to cut back in real quick. part of the reason why I like the decision is because I could see it being a gas fest turning into. We see it all the time with these low-level heavyweight fights where neither has enough to throw. They just stand and make it to the end. And to build off your other point about Vandeera's losses, I mean, really the Chase Sherman losses last time out, I think is his only bad loss in the UFC, right? I mean, he lost to Sergey Spivak. I believe that may have been on short notice, if I'm not mistaken. Spivak is running through the division right now.
He's a beast.
He lost to Alexander Romanov, where, you know, I don't want to get too much into Alexander Romanov, but it's not a terrible loss, right? And then Andrei Arlovsky split decision. A lot of people, including myself, I thought Vanderaa won that fight. It went to the cards. Of course, it was an Arlovsky split decision. And then Alexei Oleinik, he was beating Alexei Oleinik. He just wound up, you know, getting dragged into Alexei Oleinik's waters there and ultimately submitted. So it's not the worst losses. Obviously, he's coming out on the bottom of all these fights, but I just want to add some context to his skid.
Yeah, no, I mean, you talk about a blacklist, Bet Juice. Like, how many more fights do you have to see out of this man to put him on the blacklist?
Just one.
I mean, you're talking about a guy that's lost 4 straight, 5 of his last 6, and you're like sitting here like this is the one that might put him. Like, he should have been put on the blacklist years ago, man. And quite frankly, I find it absolutely baffling. It seems like everybody and their grandmother is on Vanderaa this week. I get it, you know, Dana White Contender Series guy coming in, you know, debut, but man, I mean, like, I don't know how you can trust Vanderaa with your money. Like, I just don't get it.
It's easier with the dog price. I'll tell you that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. They're just trying to get you, man. Vanderea's getting knocked out in the first round. Easy.
This guy, Waldo Cortes, is very, very bad.
And so is Vanderaa.
That's what it comes out to.
This is a low-level heavyweight. This is a low-level heavyweight MMA fight at its finest.
Right.
Cortes has power, and he's the Contender Series specialist. He's beaten a bunch of cans who are like 5'10". I mean, he beat an Oompa Loompa, let's be honest, in his last fight.
Oh, like, man, that was ridiculous.
Should not have been in a UFC cage. And yeah, Vanderaa is not very good, but he's got his UFC experience and he's got decent volume for a heavyweight. And he's going to be the taller guy here. I don't think Cortes is just going to be able to bully him, which is his real only path to victory. And if you're going to give me plus 185 against a guy whose only real path to victory is bullying to a first round knockout, I'm happy to take a small shot. I want to add more, but because it's Vanderaa, I'm not gonna. It's just going to be a unit. But you got to play that number.
Nah. I'd like have a daydream of like the wasting money meme where they're just like throwing money in the fire here with the guy.
You could very well be right. We could all just be, you know.
Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that Waldo is like this bona fide star, but like we can all agree that in the heavyweight division, in a sloppy heavyweight, you don't necessarily need like the technicalities to finish it. Like all you really need is just that.
Did you watch his Contender Series fight?
No, but that's why the dog number is the reason that you should be taking this, because it could be a slop fest and it's a 50-50 fight.
Here's the thing: is that Tafa is probably one of the harder hitting heavyweights in the division, and Vanderaa was able to take his shots. You know, it was an ugly fight, but I don't see Acosta having more power than Tafa. He'll probably be a little bit quicker, so I can absolutely see a scenario. Again, it's first round or bust for Acosta in my eyes. I think that Vanderaa is just going to have to do a lot of pushing up against the fence. He'll be the bigger guy in there, right? So I think he'll be the one that'll be
265.
Yeah, he'll be the one that'll be able to push Acosta back. And Acosta's used to being the hammer, right? We've never seen him as the nails. We've never seen him as the nail. We've seen Vanderaa as the nail. I mean, I think in that fight against Sherman, he lost based off of like an accumulation of shots. Like Sherman was just quicker and sharper than him, and he was just landing. And
he gassed.
He gassed, and Sherman has some competent stand-up. I mean, we often see him lose getting taken down and down and down, but that wasn't the case in that fight. Sherman was able to just land volume, and eventually just break him down. Acosta is not going to be throwing that kind of volume. He'll be looking for the one shot. And man, we said this. We counted out a guy in Rafael Assunção a couple of weeks ago who was on a 4-fight hit and over the hill. I'm not comparing the two, right? Assunção is Vanderaa cannot hold a candle to Assunção. I'm just saying is like sometimes you look at the losing streak and it kind of masks who the fighter really is. And Vanderaa is actually a fairly competent fighter. I mean, up until his losses, Romanov, Arlovsky, Oleinik, these are guys that have been staples.
He's got bad fight IQ, though.
See, you guys just made the 2 points I was going to say.
Yes.
He's a good fighter. He's a
with
decent
bad fight
fighter.
IQ.
His poor fight IQ costs him, but in a fight as low level as this, you could get away with making mistakes. You know,
you're 100% right.
It's when you're fighting the Arlovskys, the Romanovs, the Spivaks, the Oleyniks,
the 46-year-old Oleinik. Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to play Acosta here, it only makes sense to play a first-round knockout, 100%. Maybe as a hedge off of Vanderaa.
100%.
That Oleinik fight still haunts me. I don't think I bet that fight, but the fact that he went to ground with Oleinik is still one of the dumbest things I've ever seen.
Just the lack of awareness, right? The lack of awareness. And again, that's a risk that's not present in this fight. So
he'll take down Oleinik, but he won't take down Chase Sherman, right? So
exactly.
I mean, I can see Vanderaa taking down Acosta here, and I want to see Acosta off his back. You know, I don't think he'll have anything to offer.
It's gonna look like a turtle.
Kev, I want to see the Acosta ticket with the amount of head shakes I've seen.
Yeah, look, man. I mean, everybody is saying, "Oh, yeah, he's gonna take him down," and it's like, bro. I mean, he's only landed 1 takedown in the UFC. Like, how are you gonna rely on a man?
He's gonna out-volume him.
Well, look, I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying strictly like initiating that grappling, taking this fight to the mat. I just don't know how one can be so convicted that Vanderaa is going to come in with this game plan of taking him to the mat when he hasn't shown history of that in 7 UFC fights, which is quite a sample size to make an assumption. Look, I'm playing Acosta KO round 1 all day. Vanderaa is just a bum. He's a bum. And I just don't understand the conviction on the side. I've been hearing it like all week on MMA Twitter, like everybody's on Vanderaa. I just like see a red light, man. I see a red light. Vandeera's.
But just to remember the numbers. I'm not saying Vanderaa is a lock here. I'm saying he's 55% here. That's my opinion. I still think Waldo wins 45% of the time. If you fight 10 times, it's not that big of a shake. But that's where the value with the line comes in and why I'm willing to take the poke.
That's fair. And I think that to be fair, you are getting good value on Vanderaa versus a guy making his debut. But at the end of the day, is he going to win the fight? And if he doesn't win the fight, then it doesn't matter how much value is there. So I don't know.
Are we trying to predict fights or are we trying to bet value bets? That's the question that comes down to.
Yes.
Both. But they both have to like intertwine.
I think they're kind of separate. You play value long enough, you'll come out on top.
We'll see. Well, we'll most definitely see Vanderaa on the blacklist, even though he should have been there years ago.
In percentage terms, how often does Acosta win this fight, Kev?
I would say in the first round.
No, just
overall.
And that's where I'm like agreeing with you in the sense that you are getting good value on Vanderaa.
Right.
I think this is definitely more of a coin flip or maybe a slight favorite on the Waldo side, just because he has that danger factor and that finishing ability. But yeah, no, I mean at minus 215, like it's whack. Like if you're taking that money line, I don't know what's going on with you there because I mean his only path here is that first round knockout, and that's what I've been envisioning. I see everybody on Vanderaa this week. I'm not on Vanderaa. I don't know how you guys trust this man with your money, whether he's at plus 300 or not in this spot. So good luck to you guys.
See, that's why I try to stay off Twitter during fight week because quite frankly, I don't really give a shit who everyone else is on. I want to, just look at these for what they are. And with that being said, I think we've spent a little bit too much time on this fight. I think it's time to move on to the, I believe the co-main event, right? Tim Means taking on Max Griffin. Max Griffin, I think, is minus 175. Tim Means plus 150. It seems like every single fight is lined around this minus 175 spot here. Kev, I'm going to let you kick this one off.
Yeah, man. I mean, I was watching tape on Griffin last night, and quite frankly, watching some of his early fights to his previous fights, it seems like he's shown a lot of evolution with his cardio, just the way he's able to kind of go into the flow on the feet. He just seems a little bit more sound defensively. He's not getting clipped like he was earlier in his career. Guy in Tim Means the dirty bird, right? The bona fide journeyman of the UFC, man. I mean, talk about a veteran, right? 48 MMA fights, 26 UFC fights. The man is an absolute veteran of the sport. Just super gritty. I think that if Tim Means has a shot here, he's going to have to utilize those takedowns. We did see some evidence of that versus the Kevin Holland fight. He did land a few takedowns there. So definitely something inspiring to see. But a guy in Griffin, man, I mean, he hits incredibly hard. He has that like stiff right jab. Like he can literally just knock someone down with just like a clean jab right then and there. I believe he's training with Fluffy Hernandez, if I'm not mistaken. Griffin, I think that's his main training partner. If anybody can certify that, but look, Griffin does have like a really sneaky like low leg kick, and I think that'll definitely be here in this spot. I honestly like Griffin to knock out Tim Means here. Tim Means is on the tail end of his career. Griffin is still hungry. He's shown, that he belongs in the UFC. Mind you, he's 35, 36, but he seems to be like in pretty good shape. He seems to be like a younger 36er. So
I was surprised when I saw he was only that he was 36.
Right. But like, I know you guys have seen, man, like once Griffin really gets in that rhythm and he feels that confidence in there, man, he looks really good. And quite frankly, I think that he'll be able to absorb those takedowns and keep his fight standing. And, for that reason, I like Griffin in this spot. Last I looked, it was minus 180 from minus 170. Of course, we don't have anything locked in for the KP. Personally, I just feel as though that it's a great parlay piece. Don't really like this line taking it straight up for some reason. But Griffin should get the job done here.
Yeah.
Go
ahead. I'm with you on this. I think Max really has found himself as a fighter. He was a late bloomer. I was also shocked that he was 36. And yes, also you're right. He is training with Fluffy Hernandez from that camp. He was 3-6 in his first 9, Max Griffin, in the UFC, and then he's 3-1 in his last 4. Arguably 4-0 with that Magny fight. He's got really big power. And Tim Means' last fight against Holland, Holland's speed advantage was gross there, and that's the reason he ultimately finished him. But he was hurt multiple times in that fight, and that's what led to him getting caught in that Darce trip. And with a guy like Max, who I call him a big gut type of guy, if you know what I mean, he's got that power. He's got power coming from everywhere, and he's going to kick your calf to blend in to get you thinking about that, and then he's going to knock you out with his hands. And like you said, I like Max Griffin here. I have him to finish being 35%, him to win only being 60%, because I do see Tim Means being a grinder and being able to grind on him if he can get inside and can get Max on the cage in a clinch. So I just played, I had a half unit plus 240 Max finish.
Yeah, Griffin is. I like your take on him being a late bloomer, because I think that's exactly what he is. He's one of these guys that seems to always get sucked into these these crazy wars, and it's like at one point it was like this guy can't catch a break in UFC. He was just losing, close decision after close decision. That fight against Neil Magny, he really impressed me, and some can make a case that he actually won the first 2 rounds of that fight. Definitely won the first. The second was a bit of a toss-up, and then the third, Magny came in and grappled him, and kind of solidified that W. But close fight, he was able to drop Magny in the first, and Magny being the longer fighter, Griffin was actually outlanding him at distance at a point, and that's I think going to be the difference here. Like, Griffin has a really long reach. He'll be at a height disadvantage here, but he uses that right hand really well in both down the pipe and to the body. I mean, I think Griffin is going to be definitely the moment winner here. He'll be the harder hitter. It's just going to be a question of if he can, make Tim Means kind of just back off a little bit. Tim Means is going to trying to get in his face, clinch, elbows, and really just turn it into a duck fight. Griffin knows how to, fight in those too, but I think where he's strongest at is when he's, moving laterally and kind of sticking and moving. He's going to be the better athlete in there. And I lean Griffin here. I think the Magny fight was an interesting one for me because I actually had Griffin in that fight. I placed a bet on him just because I thought it was value at plus money. I think he got like plus 230 on him, and it was value. In that spot. It was value. I mean, if you bet plus 3.5, you would have cashed that ticket. He won 1 round on 2 of the judges' scorecards and 2 on 1 of them. So it was an interesting spot, and I see this as being kind of a reward for taking a tough guy and Neil Magny to the distance. And I like Griffin here. I'll definitely have a straight up play against him. I like him as a parlay piece here too. But I think Tim Means is guys that he seems to be capped fairly accurate by the market. He's cashed a couple dog tickets, but for the most part, he wins when he's supposed to win. He loses when he's supposed to lose. And I think a fight like this, he's going to be giving up the power. He's going to be giving up the speed to Griffin. And again, from an athleticism standpoint, I think Means' only shot, in my opinion, here is a 3-round kind of grinding victory where he's just kind of in Griffin's face the whole time. So if Griffin could keep moving, not kind of stay stationary and land that power right, I think he should be able to. I think even get Tim Means out of there. Like, he has big power.
Yeah, I think it's funny that I believe we're all in agreement here that the longer fighter, his better chance here is within close range, right? I think Tim Means, if he could keep this within the clinch or, just within elbow range, that's where he's going to win, because that's where we've seen Griffin struggle, right? Griffin likes to keep it at distance. He likes to strike, likes to get his strikes off, get out of the way. Tim Means, you made a good point, Dan. He beats who he's supposed to beat, right? And he loses who he's supposed to lose. So he does a very good job beating up lesser competition. I mean, not to take anything away from them. Nicholas Dalby, his last one before Holland, he's like a shell of himself lately. Especially that fight, he was not in good shape for that fight. Mike Perry, who was on the out and out, Laureano Staropoli, just his last 3 wins really against guys he should beat, right? And Max Griffin, he's fighting guys like Neil Magny. Neil Magny's fighting guys like Shavkat, right? So you got to put some context into that. And I agree with everything you guys have said. I like Max Griffin here. We've seen Tim Means get hurt in the Holland fight, in the D-Rod fight. He got knocked out by Nico Price. So, I think that there's chances for Griffin to get a knockout win here. But at minus 175, I actually like Griffin at that line.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, just to give a little contradicting opinion here. I mean, Tim Means has landed a takedown 6 of 8 fights, right? So that's definitely something that you want to see in an underdog. With Tim Means, 26 UFC fights, he's only been knocked out once. So, clearly the guy is incredibly tough. Am I confident that Griffin is going to get this knockout? Absolutely not. But it just does seem like that marquee matchup where you have a guy kind of on the uprise, even though he's already 36, he still has a bright future in the UFC versus a guy in Means who's really kind of on that way out. So just thought I'd just put that in there for a perspective. But, I do agree with you, Dan. I think that if this hits the 3rd round, I think it's definitely time to sweat. Because, you have a guy in Tim Means who's just such a gritty veteran, man. And, man, we could really see a 1-1 going into the 3rd or, but look, when Max Griffin fought Neil Magny, man, in that 3rd round, a lot of red flags, just the way that I don't want to say that he was gassed, but he was just getting controlled. He was getting ragdolled, man. I mean, and look, it is what it is, but it is just something to consider here. So I do have a little bit of hesitation taking this straight up, but I think it's a pretty safe parlay piece here.
Yeah, we've seen Magny do that to a lot of people, though. He has some very, very solid grappling. Pushes a good pace. That's make a case for Means. I mean, that's how you beat a guy like Griffin. Is you may start slow, but as the fight, once it starts to look a little bit dirty, right? I mean, not as clean. Griffin likes that clean striking match where he can land power shots, but once you start kind of really turning this into a war, I mean, we've seen him fumble the ball a couple times. So that's definitely the path here. So yeah, I mean, Means is definitely live here. I just think Griffin, again, a spot that he should win. It's kind of his fight to lose, if you will.
Yeah. Should be a banger though. Should be a very technical chess match, I expect. So
yeah, or it could just be an all-out war firefight, right? So it'll be an exciting one, but without further ado, moving to this main event, the fight that we're all here for. You got Arnold Allen. I believe he's on an 11-fight win streak going against Calvin Kattar. Allen right now, I think I'm seeing at minus 125. So they officially flipped the line from Kattar to Allen now. I know you guys are trying to get ahead of that Arnold Allen line for the past week, and I put the kibosh on it because I'm on Calvin Kattar. But before I make my case, I'm actually going to pivot to our guest Max here to kick us off for this main event of the evening.
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of love for Allen online this week, and like you said, the odds have flipped, which is why I think we are getting a great number on Calvin Kattar here. I have a unit and a half on him at plus 105. He's so good. He gets hit a lot, but his striking, his elbows is so crisp. He loves to attack the calf and throw straight and jabs at distance, and then when he gets close, switches it up to those really knifing elbows. He has the height and reach advantage here. His chin also is so good that I don't think Arnold Allen can just run through it the way he did with Dan Hooker. And it allows him to take shots and throw double the power back. His volume's great, and his cardio to me is a big plus. He has 5-round experience and used his cardio as an advantage in those fights. He's pushing pace and he's pressuring guys. I'm not taking away anything from Arnold Allen. He's an outstanding fighter, and he's 18-1 in this spot for a reason. His grappling, especially his wrestling, is a plus, plus, plus. I love it, and I think he's going to be a contender for a very long time and might be a champion one day. But I think this is the fight that he gets hit with, where he loses this, realizes the adjustments he has to make, and it makes him a way better fighter. He throws hard, and he has fast hands. I don't love his fight against Yusuf, whose chin is absolutely dusted, in my opinion. He landed big once and knocked him down, but he couldn't finish him. Allen's footwork, on the other hand, is outstanding, but I don't know if he can be on his bike while getting pressured by a guy like Calvin Kattar for a full 5 rounds rather than 3. Again, he's a huge 145er, but he doesn't really use that physicality and strength to his advantage because he likes to fight off the back foot unless he's going for grappling. I'm happy at a dog odd to take the guy with 5-round experience, better volume, and better boxing and elbows. So I'm on Kattar here, and I may end up adding another half unit, making it 2 if it gets up to plus 120 or so. I think he's 55, 60% here.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I'm going to jump in because I'm on the same side as Max. Then we'll let the two Arnold Allen conspiracy theorists jump in here after me. But Calvin Kattar, just such a complete fighter. And this line, if the judges gave the decision over Josh Emmett to Calvin Kattar, we'd be having a completely different conversation, which I think every single one of us in here can agree that we think that Calvin Kattar won that fight. I know I was surprised that Josh Emmett got the nod on those scorecards. Dan, I think you were surprised too at the time with that decision, but Calvin Kattar is just no other way to say it. He's a dude, right? We saw what he did to Giga Chikadze after getting absolutely beat down by Max Holloway. He came out there in a 5-rounder and he won 4 out of the 5 rounds, I believe, and just absolutely dominated a guy that we really haven't seen get dominated before. He's the guy that the UFC wants to test these young guys against, right? I mean, we kind of saw it against Max Holloway that he's not ready for the upper echelon of the division, which at 34 years old, it puts him in a tough position, right? So all he can do really is face these young guys like Allen and beat them and kind of be undeniable. And I think that's exactly what his MO here is in this spot. With Calvin Kattar, what we're going to get, right? We're going to get someone who's going to be there all 5 rounds, who's not going to get put away, who is going to stuff a majority of your takedowns. He is going to get within range and hit elbows on you. He's going to stay at distance. He's going to get jabs off on you and land combinations and outpoint you on the scorecards. With Arnold Allen, I pretty much just see a bully, right? I see someone who goes in there and he's able to bully these guys, either get them out of there or just get them to wilt really under his power and his pressure in a 15-minute fight. With that being said, I see him mouth breathing in second rounds often. I see him struggling to keep up paces. Third round, comes around. He's a shell of himself in the first round. So in a 5-round fight, I kind of feel like Allen has to find a way to get Calvin Kattar out of there, which we all know is a near impossible task. So at minus 125, I don't necessarily see the value in Arnold Allen. I just don't know what he's going to be able to present to Calvin Kattar that he's not going to be able to figure out. We saw Kattar deal with the power of Josh Emmett. I'm not ready to say that Arnold Allen has more power than Josh Emmett as well. It does help his case that he's a southpaw, I believe. So that may, help aid him a little bit in the striking exchanges. But other than that, I don't really see him having great takedowns where he's going to be able to sink them in deep on someone like Calvin Kattar, who I think boasts like a 90% takedown defense. And, if this does stretch into the later rounds, I don't see a way Arnold Allen outpoints Calvin Kattar in rounds 4 and 5. So it's got to be early domination from Arnold Allen for any chance of a win here, I think, which as a favorite, you don't really want that to be your only path.
Yeah, no, I mean, man, if there's one thing about Calvin Kattar, man, he is such a dog. Just his boxing is just so incredibly crisp. It's got to be some of the best in the division. And I'll always have love for Calvin Kattar, man. I mean, he's a part of probably my best bet of 2022. His win as an underdog versus Giga Chikadze. Absolutely steamrolled 50-45. And, I hear what you guys are saying, Calvin Kattar, he's so complete. But, like, the way that I see it, man, like, if you're talking about a complete UFC fighter, you're talking about a guy that's going to wrestle, that's going to grapple, that's going to take this to the mat, that's going to look for submissions. And quite frankly, Calvin Kattar is one-dimensional, and that's just how it is. That's how it is. He wants to keep this on the feet. He wants to stand. He wants to strike, and that's just what it's going to be. Guy in Arnold Allen. I was watching that Sadiq Youssef fight. I saw a lot of red flags. I genuinely did. The way he's able to smell blood is quite pitiful. Like, he knocks him down, he isn't able to find that mark. Sadiq was like out cold too, and he wasn't able to finish it. For what it's worth, obviously Allen, is able to take this to the mat. He does have that, that big left hand. It's absolute heat. And, I was breaking down this fight a little bit more last night. I'm on the Calvin Kattar side, guys. I think that the experience is going to be.
I wish I had a flip-flop with me. I'll hold it up right now.
I think the experience I think that the cardio is going to be there. Like you said, Matt, I saw a lot of red flags with Allen going into that second, third round. Saw it slowing down, not having that much power. And in a 5-round fight, I totally favor Calvin here. Mind you, he's very hittable. He takes a lot of shots, but he has a chin. Like, he can take it, and he can keep pushing forward. And I think that it's going to frustrate Allen. I think that Allen's going to be getting pieced up with these combinations. And I'm expecting a late round finish. I think that he's going to finish him in round 4, round 5. I just see a world where Allen's going into that, coming off the stool, going into round 4, just poor body language. I just, you see it in these 3-round fights, and we all know these 5-round fights are a completely different game. And for that reason, in a 5-round fight, I like Calvin Kattar at these odds. Not going to touch it yet. Like I mentioned earlier in the week, it flip-flopped. I was like, you know what? I expect Allen to be up the -140, -150 range, and I still stand by that. And with that, I think that we could potentially get Calvin Kattar at a +125, +130 mark. And man, at that number in this spot, I love that number. So let's rock and roll with Calvin. I'll lead this off to Bet Juice.
Dan has like an evil, maniacal smirk on his face. Right now. He's like,
I just love it. I love, I just love it. Kev, you were so, I'm kind of a bit of a head scratcher, man. I can appreciate the breakdown. I love Calvin Kattar, man. I had him against Josh Emmett. But like I said, when I rewatched that fight, I can absolutely see why they were giving that to Emmett. Kattar just takes too much damage, and it hurts him. He has solid power, he has crisp boxing, but the guy, unfortunately, just has shit defense. You're talking about a guy who's absorbed like 700-800 strikes in his last 4 fights. Like, that's insane. And you got to. It begs the question. Where's the regression there? At what point will his chin not start holding up?
We asked the same question about Max Holloway, and he somehow survived Volkanovski that last.
But we're also seeing Max. I think in his last few fights, well, certainly his last fight, just kind of a shell of himself. It seems like those wars are catching up to him a little bit. We'll see in his next fight. Nothing announced yet, but I think the other thing too is that we never really saw Dan Hooker get finished like that either, right? I mean, he had been a guy that had been, he was in a 5-round war with Dustin Poirier, taking his best shots, and Arnold Allen. Yeah, sorry, what? Yeah, he lost to Michael Chandler for sure. But I mean, again, that was that sort of that one blemish. But I think Chandler hits like a fucking truck, and it's like, I just think that it seems as though that Arnold Allen is going to be the more well-rounded guy here. I mean, again, I can tell you from experience, Arnold Allen has been training at TriStar for years now, and I've never had a chance to train with him directly, but I know a lot of guys that have, and his wrestling is very good. People sleep on his wrestling. People think that he's a striker, and that he is to a certain extent. I mean, boxing is definitely going to be his one approach to how he pulls something out of his bag of tricks here, guys. I think he's going to be able to bully Kattar a little bit in there. I think he'll be able to push him up against the fence. We're not going to see the same approach against that we did against Dan Hooker, because I think Hooker is a bit of a slow starter, and I think Allen knew that, and that's why he blitzed him super early. But what I like about Allen is that I know a lot of people shit on his kind of killer instinct, but that fight against Sadiq Youssef, he was out for over a year. So I chalk that up to a bit of ring rust. Maybe just wanted to play it safe, get the W. It was a high stakes contender fight that a win there would project him into that fight with Hooker. So I can see why he maybe playing a bit conservative. I agree that, he looked a little bit gassed, but nothing that would scare me, I think, here. And again, I think it just comes down to the fact that Kattar is going to be able to, he's going to be able to give it. But I think for him, if he just starts taking shot after shot after shot, it's going to look bad. And like, I don't think that he's going to be able to finish Allen in there. I'll be very surprised if he does. I know a lot of people are saying that Allen's a bit kind of untested, but this guy has been training with top tier guys for years now. I mean, you don't get an 11 fights in a row, 11 fight winning streak, something like that in the UFC without having some solid skills. And I think this line flip is a bit of a fugazi. I think a lot of people are going to see this plus money on Calvin Kattar and eat it all up, and we're going to come kind of fight time and see Arnold Allen is a real contender in this division, guys. Kattar is solid. I was very high on Kattar in that leading up to that fight against Emmett. I cashed Kattar against Giga. I thought that was a great spot for him, but Giga's very one-dimensional. So I think Allen, for him to win here, he's going to have to mix it up a bit. I think he absolutely has all the tools to do that. I can absolutely see him. And on the feet, Allen has some crisp boxing, sharp jab, and I think from a fight IQ standpoint, I actually give him the edge here. Kattar is just too, he's too willing to engage in those wars that has lost him fights in the past. So I'm going to be on the Allen side. I like that I like that I'm away from the masses here and out on an island.
You see, it flipped because I was away from the masses against you two. But I think it's hard to judge fight IQ when you're always winning fights, right? Like when you're like in Arnold Allen's position, I think the fight IQ comes out when you're facing adversity. I think it's fair to say that. So
it's more about your approach to the fight, right?
I mean
he approached that Hooker fight exactly how he should have.
But are you saying his fight IQ versus Dan Hooker was good? Because he got himself clipped bad on the rush.
I wanted to make that point.
I mean, listen,
he poor IQ, and that's round one.
Well, no, because Hooker is a known slow starter. Hooker is a known slow starter, and he blitzed him early, and he knew that he could take Hooker's shot. Hooker is not a one punch KO guy, and I think he just had confidence in his chin, confidence in his ability to overwhelm Hooker, and it worked. So
I don't know.
For me, that's the game plan.
I don't know if it was confidence or immaturity, if I'm being completely honest there. I thought that Hooker fight honestly gave me a lot of red flags about Arnold, as weird as it sounds, because he did dominate. Hooker, it was his first time cutting down to 145, so his durability was just shot. I don't put that on Arnold Allen at all, if I'm being honest.
That's why he's blitzing him early. That's why he's blitzing
For
him
sure.
early, because he knows
but he's also blitzing him early with his head completely high in the air, and the only strike that Hooker really threw put him down. And you got to realize if you blitz in against Calvin Kattar like that, you're going to get an elbow and you're going to be asleep.
Listen, I think what we've seen Kattar win has been against, guys that have been, try to put him away and haven't been able to. And I think it's one of these scenarios where I feel like it's going to be a close one. That's for sure. I love the over here. I just think Arnold Allen has a little bit more to prove here. And I feel like, again, like I said, the plus money on Kattar looks very attractive. I saw that. I was like, oh, shit. It's a good spot. It made me almost want to bet Kattar. But I'm sticking to my guns here. Give me the TriStar guy out of Montreal. Allen is a transplant,
of course,
Montreal fighter here. And I got to rep my guy.
You know what, Dan? It's funny because this fight reminded me of Gamrot versus Dariush, maybe because the wound is still fresh. And you saying because he's a TriStar guy, me saying because Gamrot's a Polish guy. It's all a bit too familiar. You see the plus money on Dariush. You think one way, so you must think the other. So same thing here.
Who has the grappling advantage here? Who has the grappling advantage? That's my question. Yeah,
Allen.
Okay.
Offensively, Allen.
Do you?
In the first 2 rounds, Allen.
Well, we haven't seen Allen, and I can tell you that Allen has 5-round cardio, 100%.
You could, but in his 3-round fights, he doesn't show it because he gets tired and he mouth breathes.
Because it's a 3-round fight. You got to approach it a little bit differently. I think it's
100%. But you can't prove that he has experience doing that.
Well, I mean, again, I know a lot of people that
Cardio
are
in the
training
gym
for
and
guys,
cardio in
so
a fight are different.
yeah, no, for sure, right there. Again, for Allen to win, he needs to not engage Allen. Turn this into war. But even at that, I think if it goes there, I think Allen still has what it takes to win. I really do. He's gonna. I don't want to say he's going to be the harder hit in there. It's super close. Both guys have really strong boxing. I really listen. I respect all your opinions, guys, but I mean, I'm stuck on the Allen side over here.
It's funny coming into this fight and this episode. I thought I was going to be the one on the defensive for my stand on this. I didn't expect to be on the offensive. So kudos to you with your defensive posture, Dan.
Look, and like Arnold Allen, he's 28 years old. So like, look, for the record, man, I have a lot of high hopes for Arnold Allen and his career in the UFC. But like, this is a very tough test in a 5-round fight as well. Like, look, if we're talking about a 3-round fight here, I'm probably leaning the Allen side. But I think in a 5-round fight, it tremendously favors the Calvin Kattar side. And look, he has absorbed a lot of damage. Of course, out of those 700-800 strikes that you mentioned, 400 of those was from Max Holloway just about 2 years ago. So, look, I mean, it's going to be an all-out war, guys. I think that we're going to see an action-packed main event. I don't see much timidness in this fight. I have a slight hesitation that, like, with Arnold Allen's, like, his shiftiness, like the way he's able to, like, move around the octagon, that it might frustrate Calvin. But I just think, like, towards the end of that second, third round, I think that we're going to see Calvin get in that groove and just take over this fight. I do expect Allen to win round 1. So I may even wait until, we get a better line on Calvin, but I probably won't take a chance there just because we're already getting Calvin at plus odds. So let's rock and roll, baby. What a great main event.
Let's be real. There's a reason the probability of the lines is 55% and nothing bigger than that, because This fight is so close.
Yeah.
It's a banger. It's a great fight.
Such a banger.
And yeah, I mean, if you guys have nothing else to add on to that, I think we hashed that one out pretty good. 3-on-1 there, but Max, thank you for joining us here for UFC Vegas 63. Calvin Kattar versus Arnold Allen. Max, hope to see you in the Twitter Spaces this Saturday. As always, we missed you last week, so it'll be nice to get you back in there.
Yeah, I'll absolutely be in there. I don't have a wedding this weekend, and thank you guys for having me on this show, and thanks for including me in your spaces every week.
Love it. And it's like our co-main event is named Max, so it's like it's only right that we bring you on the show for this card.
Yeah, the sneak and the sabermetric. But guys, thank you for joining us, and see you on Twitter Saturday.